Hi, welcome back. It's been a while since we've done one of these.
That is true. And it is very hot still.
It is extremely
So
hot.
let's just get it over with.
Yeah. I mean, it's hot, but it's not as hot as the music that you prepared for today, of course.
I think that's true. I think there's really much to say about how hot that kind of music is. Um, so yeah, we will go straight into it, and we will just talk about the piano introduction, in fact, of the last art song of the Wesendonck-Lieder cycle, so to speak.
All right.
Yeah. So we want to keep it short, so only the introduction. And now I'm not a Wagnerian, so to speak. Okay, so for me it's actually my first proper public Wagner analysis.
Okay.
And I also have the situation that I have to teach, in fact, for one of my students, a little bit of Wagnerian harmonic style and stuff like
Oh,
that.
okay.
And so I really need to study that
But
stuff.
you could just look at Liszt and Mendelssohn. I mean, that's what he stole from.
True, but we should grant him his originality. Yeah, I at some point I need to study Wagner, and I thought maybe I can do an episode about somebody who's not a Wagnerian analyzing Wagner. And in fact, maybe this piano introduction, that's at least my thesis, is quite still quite easy to handle, but it already shows some significant style features, at least of that period. Maybe not too much about Wagnerian leitmotif technique and stuff, but about the general musical language. And I want to talk about 5 aspects. You see that in my analysis. And then we have some fun quotations, and I'd like to talk about that too.
Okay.
In that blue box. Okay, so the first aspect is the tonic major 6/5 chord in the beginning. Also the pentatonic scale, which I think plays an important role, and 6/5 suspensions. So this is all sort of one category for me. Second point is 9/8 suspensions. Third one is the functional framework. The fourth one is chromatic alteration as central voice leading device. And the last one is that I think it gives us a taste of the unendliche Melodie. I don't know if you translate that. So this
I don't know either.
I think it's maybe a proper term, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we can just say, some sort of an infinite melody, right? A melody that never stops.
That's good, yeah.
Which Wagner said the best example was Beethoven Opus 101, first movement, the piano sonata, which indeed never ends. It's a melody that keeps going on and on.
Let's go to the tonic major 6/5 chord. So you see in the very second bar, right, you have a proper tonic 6/5 chord. And this is not, that's not a banality. right? So it is really crucial to find out, I think, when we can actually deal with 6/5 chords which are not some subdominant chords, which are not perceived as subdominant chords, but which are in fact sort of a tonic which has already an option, right? So you can have a tetrad, a tonic tetrad, which is quite interesting because for a very, very long time, right until I think really Romanticism, and we will discuss or maybe argue about the point when it actually will happen. But for a very long time, the tonic has to be a triad. All the other functions, subdominant, right, can have a 6 or 6/5, or even a 7 if you have a minor subdominant. Dominant is obvious, and all the other functions can have, or secondary functions can have, of course, options.
Yes.
So can develop to tetrads, which are necessarily always more dissonant than triads. And so it's a very interesting point to see when this actually happens. Of course, Wagner is well into Romanticism. This is 1857 or 58, I think.
Okay.
And I also must point out he starts with a triad, and then it's going to be this tetrad. So it's not like he starts immediately with that sound. Yeah, and we might be sure that, for example, when we go to Impressionism, that we will already have the phenomenon that a 6/5 chord could really sound as a tonic.
Yes,
chord.
of course.
So it has to happen somewhere before. And I think this is a good example, because although it's sort of a chord in between stuff, which is for Wagner not surprising, everything is sort of transitory. It's a good indicator. And I found two other examples, which I want to play just very quickly, where I think we have a tonic 6/5 chord. And I also want to point out what a tonic 6/5 chord means in Romanticism. I think it stands for homeliness and the nature.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's go to Die schöne Müllerin, third art song.
Okay.
Schubert, of course.
Yes.
Eine Mühle sehe ich blinken aus den Erlen heraus, durch
and so on. You see here this arpeggio, right?
Yes.
So obviously we have the miller and this very so many romantic symbols which are sort of nostalgic to the past and idealizing nature and distant past, right? And so I think this major 6/5 chord is within that Lokalkolorit, we would say in German. So depiction of a scene or making a setting.
Yeah, a very pastoral setting, right? So
sort of pastoral setting, but in a completely different way, of course, than in Baroque music, but similar in a way, right? So this is one example. We must point out that it is an arpeggio. It's not a chord. It doesn't have the vertical gravity of a chord. So
yes,
I think that would be another matter, but still. And let's go now to somebody who's very important for Wagner, even though he didn't want to quite admit it. That's an understatement. He was really brutal against Meyerbeer. And we will hear Vasco da Gama, third act opening. Okay, so clearly again it's an arpeggio,
Yeah.
right? B major, and interestingly we have rule of the octave in a way, and that's also
Yeah, true.
a very very nature-like state.
Yeah.
You might call that, of at least for some people, for Fétis, for example, it was a very natural thing. And we have again, as an arpeggio, not quite as vertical as maybe in later times, but clearly there is something to that notion I want to put out here, that the tonic 6/5 chord in high, let's say high romanticism, will develop as the first possibility to have actually a tetrad, a tonic tetrad, right?
Yeah.
Now what Wagner does is still a lot more. So we have this chord on the second bar, but we also have pentatonic scale on A flat.
Yes.
Starting on the E flat, but then, so it would be all fine. We don't have the B flat, but well, that's still okay, I think. The major 6/5 chord is kind of an abbreviation of the pentatonic scale missing. There's one note missing, but you still get a very strong feeling of pentatonic. And here the C flat is, of course, this very interesting alteration, a very great moment, I think. We don't expect the C minor here. Sorry, the
C flat.
Yeah. And so this is clearly an alteration of the idea having a sort of pentatonic. And I think, for example, in Rheingold, right, when you have the opening, the introduction, you have for vast time, you have just one major chord, and also the Rheintöchter, these three beautiful creatures, right? They also use this pentatonic abbreviation of the major 6/5 chord a lot. And so it is quite likely to interpret it here as a formula. And this alteration is a very neat thing to do, in fact. And then, which I really like, also we have these 6/5 suspensions rather in the end here, a bit earlier. Right, so it's the highest note of the melody, and we have different chords, right? Here we have A flat major 7 chord, A flat 7 chord, dominant 7th chord, and it is the typical romantic 6/5 suspension on a D7 chord, which is you are well into the 19th century when you do that. And then you have you shift to E flat 7, and then it's a 9/8 suspension, and then it's again a 6/5 suspension, but now the very last one, right? It's a tonic 6/5 suspension. So this is very neat, and it's also something that creates a very strong unity, the whole piece, right? It starts with a strong sense of major 6/5 and pentatonic on A flat, and then it also ends with that same notion. Probably a tribute to the very small form, right? So the art song is not, of course, not an opera or something like that. So other features like the always transitory harmonic state is, at least in the end, not here. In the end, we have a cadence, actually. Okay, now let's go to the suspensions a little bit more detailed. We have all these suspensions starting on bar 5 going to bar 16, so very, very similar suspensions. First on a D flat 9/7 chord as a 9/8 suspension, and then you go to a D flat diminished chord. So we are here, D flat 7, D flat diminished, and then we go we transpose the motive one tone higher, and then we are where we were before, where I talked before about the 6/5 suspension.
But wait, you said D flat diminished, but it's G diminished.
Here?
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of the same, right? I would say.
Well, it's an harmonic, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
but it's spelled as a G diminished, right?
It's spelled as a G diminished. Yeah, I didn't really pay attention to that, but I said D flat diminished because I see it as, if you look left, I see it as a parsimonious voice leading product, so to speak, right?
Ah, because I really saw it as a falling fifth sequence, this whole thing. Not falling fifth, sorry, as a cadence. So D flat is subdominant, and then the G diminished is the dominant, and then A flat is the tonic, which comes up as a Abschiedsseptime, and then we have another round.
Sorry, where's E flat as a tonic?
Subdominant,
Yeah.
Dominant, and then this should be tonic, but it's a Abschiedsseptime.
So the tonic is on A flat.
Yeah.
And then you have a D flat, and this in the middle right there, bar 7 to 8 is.
This is a dominant. It's just dominant.
And the fundament for you is E flat then.
Yes, yes. If you think in German terms, yes. If you think in American terms, it's the 7th degree in A flat major, full diminished.
Yeah. True. So let me have a chance to hear that again. Now subdominant. I mean, yeah, of course. Connection to this one.
Well, yeah, it's
seems like a resolution, and then you go.
Yes, but it's very deceptive, right? This chord, because I think the reason is the voice leading, right? He makes everything jump, so that doesn't give the impression that it's a tonic, but I think it should be, right? Like I think after this, you could totally have A flat with 4/3 suspension.
I guess it wouldn't be Wagner anymore. But
no, I know, but I really. But I really think it's the basis. Yes.
I mean, there's much to it, I would say. And I think this is a state of harmony where many possibilities and many logic possibilities or subjective interpretations are valid. And in fact, it is that G diminished chord, but at the same time, I would still think it develops as a D flat diminished chord.
Yes, I think I understand why you say that.
I mean, of course, diminished seventh chords are versatile, you know. So they can, of course, have a double meaning.
No, but I think I understand that you can take that chord in bars the 7/8. You can really take it as an alteration on D flat. I understand. Like it could be like how do you call it?
Nebentoneinstellung.
Nebentoneinstellung. Yes. So like a neighboring note, but like a neighboring harmony, right? Where all the notes are displaced by one step, and you might expect that they come back, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is just your version explains very neatly actually how we get there, because here the voice leading isn't as parsimonious. You see that the red lines are semitone connections, and the blue lines are whole tone connections. Actually, this is, if you look, all the red lines, right? And here you have many blue lines. So your version quite neatly explains the leap from the D flat diminished or G diminished chord to the A flat,
A flat, yeah.
7 with a 6/5 suspension, A flat dominant 7 with a 6/5 suspension chord. And I think both things are accurate and necessary to fully explain what's going on here. If you want to explain a little bit how this kind of harmony works, it is really very often the case you have a dominant 7th chord, and then you go to you take the same bass note, in that case not the bass note, but the fundamental harmony note, so the D flat, and you reharmonize it as a diminished chord. And that can be a Nebentoneinstellung, right? With all these neighboring notes, you can go back then, or it can actually open up the process for further developments as it's done here.
I think the not parsimonious voice leading is also purposefully to remove the impression of cadence here. Like I think Wagner is doing everything he can that you don't feel that it's a resolution. And so you have the leap in the melody, right, from D flat to F. So the fact that basically you get a new all-time high in terms of melody. It's like it's the new highest pitch. And also everything goes up, which is crude voice leading, right? It's kind of clumsy voice leading because you have the impression that everything moves upwards.
This is to the suspensions, but also now I'm already here at the voice leading part. And
I have another. I have something I noticed. The F flat is kind of a wrong note, right? And the consequence of which is the C flat. And this could be seen as some sort of a correction, right? Because here you still have the F flat.
Yeah.
And here you get the right one, the F natural here, right? And and the consequence of which is the real dominant that you should have gotten here, that you didn't get here. And that resolves neatly on your homely 6/5 tonic at the end. But that's just I don't know. That's something.
Yes, it's a very important point because it also refers to our the pentatonic and the treble pentatonic.
Yes, yes.
Or the destruction of the pentatonic feeling, or and the F flat plays a very important role in opening up the process to complexity and also to muddying this nature-like A flat 6/5 major feeling, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very, very important point. Actually, generally, I just wanted also to show the general fact how at least this piece of Wagner music works with very parsimonious steps, sometimes just one semitone change, and sometimes you have here 2.
Yeah.
And actually, you have very often when you have tetrads, and this is, we will see a quotation from De la Motte. He talks about the tetrads in Wagner music, which are not so dissonant, he says.
Yeah.
We always have no more than one major third. Of course, when you have a triad, you can have an augmented triad because it's just a triad, but tetrad would be also very dissonant. And these are all very soft dissonances, very, very many dominant 7/9 chords, right? Diminished chords, which they have all these minor thirds. There's no really sharp dissonance going on.
Yeah.
And so I think this is also explains the openness and dynamic, right? When you have a flow of dissonant tetrads, which are all quite not the same, but quite similar regarding their dissonance status, so to speak.
Yeah.
We should maybe go to the functional framework because it is here, but it's not as important, of course, as in other styles. And this is actually, maybe here we have sort of a functional connection, but instead of this point, we only have the cadence here. And we have, of course, the beginning quite neatly set in the tonic. And so you still have in this art song, in the boundaries, you have a very strict functional framework, which wouldn't happen maybe in the same way if you would have a more open form like operas, right? And another thing, maybe to the voice leading, back to the voice leading again, this pedal point structure, right? So pedal points, as I wrote here, the advantage is you can either integrate the pedal point into the chordal structure, or you can use the voicing above the pedal point as an independent structure, right? So this is nothing new. Essentially, this is you can take many examples of Bach and so on, but still you have to stress that point because it explains neatly the flexibility of the voice leading, right? So for in the beginning you have the A flat as a pedal point, but also as root note, so to speak. And then when you go to this D flat, or I think already the D flat 7/9 chord is a case where you have still the A flat in the bass, but it doesn't really bother you. You wouldn't say, oh, it's clearly a 6/4 chord, which it technically is, but you already have this very independent voicing, also very full voicing.
It definitely loses its attraction, right? And its weight.
You just learn to hear it separately, I think.
Yes.
And then you have this combination, which wouldn't work so easy if you would have the A flat actually as a part of the chordal structure. So the change from D flat 7/9 or D flat 7, just a D flat dominant 7 chord to a D diminished chord, of course you would ignore the bass line and so on.
Yeah, I mean at this stage the pedal point acts like some sort of binding note, right? It kind of binds all sorts of harmonies that you could imagine.
True, yeah. You can also have quite dissonant harmonies above the pedal point, and it's the sense of overall unity, right?
And also it neatly mimics the suspensions, right? Like it's kind of a rhythmical underlining, because it leaves the 8th notes conveniently after 4 bars, and it starts being some sort of a shadow of what the upper voice does.
True. That's also that's an important point. And also this is very important, I think, for getting the feeling where the force is. I think it sounds like Star Wars. Sorry, where the energy is, right? So it is not so easy to say because the boundaries are not defined by a very energetic moment, right? It's here's an anticlimax in the end, and so this actually, I think, in bar 5, the D flat dominant 7 chord is one climax, and you have that, of course, because the melody goes up to the E flat, but also, as you said, the bass line is now really a steady tone, and also the melody has longer notes, right? This is an important point as well. And we would then go actually to this, how did you say it, unendliche Melodie?
Infinite melody.
Infinite melody, correct. So this is it, I think. Of course, again, it's an art song, so it is a bit more close, but you have these transitory moments where you really think it can go on and on, right? And also the melody is not very well articulated or pronounced as it would be in classical music. So it actually emerges from the anonymity of the chords, right? So it's in the same rhythm, and you just see by these leaps of thirds, which are not legitimized by parsimonious voice leading, that this must be a melody here.
Yeah.
And then the melody gets an own rhythm, but what do you get? You just get one motive, which is the suspension. And the suspension itself is at least partly has to do with the chord, right? pronounces or gives importance to a certain chord. So it's also a very vertical phenomenon. So it's just a fragmentation of a melody, you could say. And this is, I think, generally very important for a certain type of melody in Wagnerian or in Wagner music. It's just 16 bars. You can explain a lot. You can think about a lot, and this is for me a great entry into the Wagner world, so to speak.